Alright guys, so in this video we're going to look at uncontrolled components. So sometimes you may not want to do this whole thing where each input is connected to your state. Now this is what I actually want for the project, what we've already done. So I'm going to just go ahead and rename this file temporarily to add contact 1, and I'm going to create a new file in here, a temporary file called add contact.js. Okay, and then I'm going to take everything we have in our original add contact and put it in here, except I'm not going to, I'm not going to have state here. So I'm going to get rid of that, and we're not going to have an on change, and then none of these are going to have on changes. So I'm going to get rid of these. All right. Now instead of the stuff coming from state, I want it to come from props, and I'm just going to add some default props. So I'm going to go and I'm going to say static default, not prevent default props, and let's set name to, we'll say Fred Smith, and let's say email. We'll set to fred@yahoo.com, and phone we'll set to 777, all sevens. Okay, and the reason I'm doing this is because when you work with Redux, a lot of the times you get your application state from the Redux store, and then you map it to props in your component. So we could pretend that this is coming from Redux. Now here, where we're taking this stuff out of state, it's no longer in state, it's in props. So we're going to say this.props, and let's save that. And you can see that it put it in as a default. Now down here, we're saying you provided a value prop to a form field without an onChange handler. Remember, we got rid of the onChange. This will render a read-only field, which it is. If I go up here and I try to type, it doesn't work. So it also says if the field should be mutable, use default value. Otherwise, set either onChange or read only. So like it says here, instead of using value, we want to use default value. So we're going to change the values here to default value, like that. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy this default value for all of these, and then let's save, and you can see that the warning goes away, and then up here I can now type in. Okay, now it's not affecting the state. We don't even have any state in this component. This is just this is what is called an uncontrolled component. Okay, now we're going to want to get these fields when we submit the form, right? So we need a way to grab them. Before, we would just it was all in state. Okay, when we submitted, it was all in the state, but now we don't have state, so we can actually get rid of that line in the on submit. The way that we do this is with refs. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to assign an additional attribute here, or property of ref for each one. So this is the name, so we're going to set it to this.name input. Okay, we need to add one of these for all of the fields. So we'll grab this, and let's go down here, and this one is going to be this.email input, and this one is going to be this.phone input. Okay, now just doing this isn't enough. We have to go and we have to create a constructor. So up here, let's say constructor, and if we have any props, those will get passed into the constructor, and then we have to call super, and you also have to pass the props into there. So we need to basically assign the this.name input, this.email input to react.createRef. That's going to create a reference. So we'll say this.name input, and we're going to set it to react dot right here create ref. Okay, we want to do that for all three fields. So we can go over here and let's make this one the phone input. This one will be the email, like that. So now we have a ref attached to each field. Now when we submit the form, what we could do is let's create an object called contact, and let's set that to just an object literal, and we're going to say name. And the way that we can access the submitted value now, since we have a ref on it, is we can say this dot name input, and then we can say dot current dot value. That's how we can access it. So let's copy this down a couple more times, and then we'll change this one to this dot email input, and we'll change this to email. This one will be phone, and let's change this to phone input. Okay, so it's going to be input and then dot current dot value, and then finally let's just console log the contact. All right, so let's try it out. We'll go ahead and save this. And if we were to edit this, like we'll say Fred Jackson, and we'll change it to Fred Jackson at Yahoo. We'll change the number. Okay, so let's go ahead and submit. And there we go. So down here you can see we have an object and we have all the updated data. Okay, so this is how we can use an uncontrolled component where we're not connecting each input with state. It's just we're creating a ref on each one so that we can grab on to it inside the submit and we can get the new data. Okay, and I often use this with like if we're using Redux and we're bringing in props and I want to use them as a default value, and then we need a way to submit the form to update the contact or whatever the resource is. We could do it this way. All right, so this isn't actually going to be part of the project. This one, the first one we created is, but I just wanted to address this and show you how this works. All right, so in the next video, we're going to work on actually submitting the form. Actually, before we end this video, let's change the name of the file we just created. Let's say I will keep it in here. I'll just call it add contact underscore ref. And then we'll change this one back to just add contact. All right, there we go. So in the next video, we'll continue on with the form submission.